It's a zinger. Available for a limited time. KFC, it's finger-licking good. The time by KFC is...
CVM TV. That's right. You get big side access from the comfort of your home so you can catch all the live action. Tune in and watch as Brazil, Argentina, Jamaica, USA, and more battle for Copa Supremacy. Tournament kicks off on June 20 and runs through to July 14. Cheer on the boys and see the goals and drama of Copa America happen live on CVM TV.
Celine, where you going?
You can't say we're a friend now, Celine.
We have to take on the road.
Yeah, man, we have to take out the same way. All right, Lord, thank you so much for this day.
Me, I do the work. Yeah. And the people, them accept it.
Clarendon, Mandeville. But now we get to go into the inner city of Kingston.
I can't wait to learn more as we go across Jamaica into different churches to understand what they do.
From operating in the public transportation space. So what now? What regulations are they going to put into the business to ensure that consumers, the commuting public, gets a fair shake, that women feel safe taking it, and that drivers feel safe taking passengers in their private motor vehicles? And how do they square up and resolve an issue that the traditional red plate drivers say puts them at a significant disadvantage relative to the rideshare drivers who do not have to go through these stringent steps that they must do in order to be certified to transport passengers? That's the issue we're going to tackle here on Lead Story. Consider me your personal journalist, George Davis. I begin serving you now. So it has been banned. Rideshare services, which germinate from apps that you download on your phones and the rides that you're able to command, that service banned for the moment. The minister in charge of telecommunications and transport, Daryl Vaz, says the ban is necessary given the reports that they received from the police of rideshare drivers being involved in several incidents of murder, sexual assault, rape of their passengers, and that the problem is at such a level that the best thing to do in this moment is to ban the service until regulations are introduced and until the whole aspect, or that whole aspect of the transport business, is sorted out. It's a very polarizing decision. Some say the minister has reacted in a knee-jerk manner to employ a blanket ban, that rather he should be meeting with the operators and the owners of these rideshare companies and trying to find a common ground. Let them operate while the regulations are introduced to make their business better. Others are saying the minister had no choice because of these stories, the horror stories of women especially being victimized by rideshare drivers, and rideshare drivers themselves finding themselves at the bad side of the gun, the part where the trigger is the muzzle rather is pointed straight at them. That's the issue we're going to talk about. How does he do the right things which make the drivers comfortable, which make the owners of these rideshare apps comfortable, and which makes the commuting public comfortable that the drive that they hail, the ride that comes to them, is a legitimate person who, in the event something goes wrong, can be traced, can be tracked, and that they are safe in the hands of complete strangers. To discuss the issue, and what the regulations should be, how the environment should be shaped, we've invited Dr. Paul Gaynor. He's a lecturer in the Department of Computing at the UWI Mona, and Dr. Sean Jones. He's the CEO of Ride Jamaica. Otherwise, Dr. Jones is a physician, a software developer, and a privacy and a security specialist. Dr. Jones is on Zoom. Dr. Gaynor is in the studio with me. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Jones, you're on Zoom. Good afternoon. Not hearing Dr. Jones just yet. All right, Dr. Gaynor, let's open the conversation. So, the obvious place to start is, now that this ban is in place, do you think that the response from the minister was appropriate given the circumstances surrounding what he said was the decision?
I wonder if it was made with enough evidence. I can't say whether it was or it was not, but it seems knee-jerk. And there could be options that could have been at least thought about. For example, with more data, and that some of the platforms help to provide data. With more data, that gives you the opportunity to monitor. And one of the things that we could have looked at is the ability to monitor to increase safety. So with a ban, then we'll likely not have the development of these procedures to monitor and thereby increase safety. At the same time, the probably thing that's missing is the due diligence. And we don't know whether or not the same due diligence is carried out with the red plates or with the white plates that are out there. So the problem is, I don't think the problem is fixed.
Well, here's the thing. I've heard people say knee-jerk, and I say to them, put yourselves in the shoes of the minister. He has a situation at his hands where a teacher has been attacked, is dead, abducted, killed. Horror situation. He has a situation where a rideshare driver, an in-drive driver last year, a UWI student was trying to make some money on the side, left home, took a job, not been seen since. Several other instances. He has a public highly skeptical about the security of these things. And you know how people are in a democracy. What is the government doing about it? With those set of circumstances in front of him, is it fair to say his reaction is knee-jerk?
The challenge I have is that the investigation of the problem was not constant. Yes, things happened, and first of all, it's really horrible what happened to that young teacher, and my heart goes out to her family, and we hope that something like that would never happen again. And I think we want to try to make sure that things like that never happen again. And the way to make sure things like that never happen again is to look at the factors that allow them to happen and then prevent those factors. I mean, in my head, some of those factors include the need for due diligence, as well as the need for us to go back to those days when we're more of a family, where we take care of each other.
But before we go there, when you say due diligence, what kind of diligence?
The persons charged with transporting others they have a responsibility. Once you are behind the wheel and someone is under your care, you're like a pilot of a vessel, right? So therefore, you're now charged with the responsibility of this person. I mean, and let's say if someone is unscrupulous, they can actually fix the vehicle to make it difficult for people to actually not leave the vehicle and probably disable the person. So you want to pay attention to persons. You have to pay special attention to persons who are actually given that responsibility. It is a responsibility, and it should be somebody's job to make sure that responsible persons get that responsibility of transporting people.
Hear you on that. All right. Dr. Jones is back with us. Before I go to him, though, I want to share with you a piece we developed to assist us in this segment on the rideshare business. It was voiced by Curtin Brown.
How do ride-sharing apps work, and are they safe? The apps work like an auction. Mr. Things Happen opened the app to the ride section. He ordered the rideshare from the studios of CVM to the Portmore Mall. The app suggested a fare of $1,300, Jamaican dollars, based on a calculation using the distance, traffic, and supply and demand for drivers. Mr. Things Happen offered a price above the suggested amount to be more attractive to drivers. Well, the sound of pings alerts Mr. Things Happen to the offers and counter-offers given by riders, and he now looks at the drivers, which includes a picture, the car and license plate, and the price offered, and he selects. When both parties have agreed on the offer, the driver and the passenger can view each other's profiles. Safety features include options to share ride details and locations, support for contacting the app's customer service, and an option to reach emergency services such as the police and the fire brigade. So how can Mr. Things Happen ensure the details provided by the driver are true to minimize the risks of unwanted things happening? Simply, he can't. He will just have to trust the app's verification process or at times his instinct. Importantly, what happens when Mr. Things Happen with the...
All right, so we got the gist of it there from Curlin Brown. I turn now to Dr. Sean Jones. He is the CEO of one of those ride-share taxi services, Ride Jamaica. Dr. Jones, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Excellent. All right, you're one of these stakeholders affected, your business put on pause. You had a meeting, well, I trust that you were among the stakeholders invited to that meeting on Wednesday involving the Transport Authority and other officials from the ministry to seek to find a way through the morass of this issue. The ban, are you understanding and agreeing with the reason for the ban at this time?
I am understanding and agreeing, and I understand why people might, have different opinions of it. But in my view, the transport sector is a very important sector for any given country. Transportation moves a nation, and if it is that the minister, at the point he made that decision, feels that he's losing control of the transport sector, to the extent that it is resulting in the deaths of citizens, then one has to understand that no measure can be too drastic if you're looking at a situation where you're trying to prevent deaths. As to how we go about it, as we collect more information, then certainly there could be a move to actually adjust the ban from the year. Because the minister did indicate that if people are able to provide proper information, etc., then they could look at, let's say, releasing a couple of ride shares. But in my view, the ban has brought this conversation to the fore, and at this point, it has now allowed everyone to come to the table with the ideas that they have. For us at Ride Jamaica, we have always looked at this development in terms of having a ride service that operates at scale in Jamaica. And what I mean by that is the concerns that are now being voiced by the minister and some of the concerns that you all have mentioned are concerns that I had looked at the time of development. So for example, with Ride Jamaica, outside of all those features that were shown in that example that you aired, we have a dashboard that law enforcement can log into, and law enforcement, wherever law enforcement is, could log in and track all the rides that are happening in real time on Ride Jamaica. All right. There's a dashboard that the Transport Authority is able to use, because what we were looking at is to ensure that we had greater efficiency within our system. So, for example, instead of having drivers going to a particular office to present their documents, those documents could be uploaded and verified by folks in the offices, and a determination made as to whether or not that driver is authorized to get, transport badge. Upon that authorization, most drivers are also involved in taxi associations. So there's a dashboard for the taxi associations where they could then authorize their drivers. So it allows for different levels of kind of due diligence, as Prof was speaking of. Yeah, we need that sort of due diligence.
For how long has Ride Jamaica been operating locally?
Ride Jamaica was established in 2016, and interestingly, it was established at the time. There was an abduction in Montego Bay that I was very concerned about. And there was also an issue of drivers feeling a bit disenfranchised and not being able to efficiently provide services. You know, so that's really the genesis of Ride Jamaica, to solve those two problems.
Since 2016, per annum, how many passengers does Ride Jamaica move around the island?
You know, I honestly don't have the figures, and I say this. What we have done, though, and where we are different, is that Ride Jamaica only works with folks who are authorized by the Transport Authority as red plate drivers. And we do most of our work also in tourism. So we haven't done a lot of local work. Most of the work is done in tourism. And so, of course, in tourism, there's also another level of due diligence, because outside of drivers having to go through the Transport Authority procedures, they also have to go through the TPD and JTB procedures. You know, so it makes it has been a very rigorous process for us.
Just before we go to the break, Dr. Jones, industry-wide, I know that Uber and Lyft report that about 99.9% of their rides are incident-free. What percentage of Ride Jamaica's rides since 2016 have been incident-free?
100%.
No incidents. You have had no incidents, not even one.
Not even one. And just to make a point as to how we do things. There was a time when Ride Jamaica was operating a service for transporting children to school. Of course, you know, that is very sensitive. So for a service like that, we handpicked all our drivers, and we had one person who was responsible for that operation. After COVID, that person was, you know, because of COVID and what happened with transport, people had to look you know, at various things. But just the fact that we didn't have that key person, and we weren't able to recruit someone who I thought was you know, sufficiently capable of managing that responsibility, we no longer offer that service, and it will not be offered until I have all that structure in place again.
Hear you on that. I have to break Dr. Jones. This is Lead Story, talking about rideshare, the problems that gave rise to the ban by the government in Jamaica, and the way forward. Much more after these.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you.
It all starts here, the JTA Sagicor National Athletics Championships, where Jamaica's future track and field stars begin their journey to greatness. June 7 and 8, National Stadium. Come out and watch our future stars shine. Admission only $300. Don't miss the 39th staging of the JTA Sagicor National Athletics Championships, June 7 and 8, National Stadium.
I'm Tara Monique from Lachelle Cosmetics, Jamaica's only vegan organic makeup brand. We are the exclusive makeup sponsors for this year's MSW events 14-14-14 Mask Wedding. Our talented team of makeup artists will be providing complimentary bridal makeup services for all brides, and we're so excited. So, if you have a wedding coming up, you can find us at LachelleCosmetics.com or on Instagram at Lachelle Cosmetics.
It all starts here, the JTA Sagicor National Athletics Championships, where Jamaica's future track and field stars begin their journey to greatness. June 7 and 8, National Stadium. Come out and watch our future stars shine. Admission only $300. Don't miss the 39th staging of the JTA Sagicor National Athletics Championships, June 7 and 8, National Stadium.
Yeah, the problem of rideshare. This is an object that's in the mirror, and the problem is bigger than it probably appears. But not for Ride Jamaica. Their CEO, Dr. Sean Jones, says since 2016, when they began operating, and they do a lot of work in the tourism industry, not a single adverse incident has been reported in terms of an interaction between any one of their drivers and any passenger. No crimes to report. That's awesome. And he says he can understand, though, why the government implemented a ban on the business given the serious national security threat and the fact that so many commuters were now getting increasingly fearful of using these services. I have him here. He's on Zoom alongside Dr. Paul Gaynor, who is a lecturer in the Department of Computing at the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. He is in studio, and we hope to do a follow-up episode to today's episode, speaking with Jamaica's technology envoy, Dushyant Savadia, the man who heads the Amber Group. But for now, Dr. Gaynor, I come back to you to ask this. Whereas Ride Jamaica has a business that is domiciled in Jamaica, offering the app-based service of a ride share. If we take the company in the eye of the storm right now, InDrive, because it's reported, the police say an InDrive driver was responsible for the murder, the abduction and murder of Daniel Anglin, the school teacher. The government says, the minister, we had nobody to call to say, give us data as we pursue this investigation. There's no local office, bigger than no local office, no local representative, nobody we could get on the phone directly to say, well, assist law enforcement in this regard. That's a huge difference from the setup that they have at Ride Jamaica. Could that not be the problem why the government opted for this shock to the system of banning the services and try to work it out?
Well, that's a matter of policy as to whether you're going to allow someone who has no local representative to work. But I'm wondering how exactly the government would actually ban. I mean, I saw a letter to the head of Cable and Wireless,
yes,
informing that that services should be restricted.
Yes.
The thing is, you wonder how realistic that is when you think about the technicalities involved. All right, so a common way for a service provider like Cable and Wireless to ban maybe a software or a service is to block what we call an IP address. So in layman's speak, you can think of an IP address as like a space that you rent that's available on the internet. So basically it's just a space on the internet. That's a number.
Yes.
So every single thing that's visible on the internet will have an address.
Yes.
So basically it's a rented space.
Yes.
Now, to block that, a company would, the traditional way is to block that
Yes.
IP address.
Yes.
So something that's related, in 2015, well, sometime in the middle of the last decade, Uber actually moved to what they call microservices architecture, meaning that instead of having one single address, they actually have a whole heap of small addresses. And that's probably more difficult to centrally manage. So I don't know what InDrive is like, so I don't know if they can be banned like that, but it's going to be more difficult to ban Uber. And interestingly, about that time, I don't know if that was related to an incident in India, where India actually banned Uber's IP address.
That was
in 2015.
2014 rape incident, yes.
Exactly, right. And Uber, well, the story is that Uber didn't want to turn over the information regarding the driver who was accused. So India responded by banning. So it's probably a coincidence that they decided to move away from this thing that could be easily banned to something else. So we have to think about how things can act, how a ban can actually happen.
Yeah.
Can it really happen?
What I envisage is that the announcement of the ban is poised to have more effect than the ban itself.
To the clients. So the clients will actually back off.
Exactly.
Right,
the clients will say, oh, the government says it's banned, I'm not using it. And those who are offering the service say, well, the government has said it's banned, so I'm not offering the service. So I think that is the net impact that the government wants to have. But Dr. Jones, let me turn to you now, because, okay, we're at this point. The government has said the ban will remain in place for a year or until regulations are developed, whichever comes first. You, as an industry player, what would you advise the minister in charge of transport and telecommunications to go forward to cabinet and say, okay, let us develop a list around these things to begin regulating this section of the business?
Well, at the end of the day, as I said earlier, in terms of how Ride Jamaica was developed, it was always a development that had a national focus. So from the outset, we kind of had a draft policy in terms of the sort of regulatory framework that we would have required to operate for it to be seamless and for it to make sense for everyone involved. So in terms of what the minister will be able to do in going to Parliament, I would therefore say that the fact that we're having this conversation and the fact that we will now all get to sit at a table where we can present our ideas, the draft policy that we have, I would hope that that would end up as part of the presentation to Parliament, because that is something that I'd looked at in terms of, looking at what happens internationally, looking at what was missing in Jamaica, looking at the development I was doing, and then thinking of how do we future-proof this development, because at the end of the day, what we have to also recognize is that the implementation of technology in any given country, especially technologies that operate at scale, at a national level even, we have to be very careful of that. Because depending on how that is managed and who is responsible for that in latter years can affect the country adversely. So it means that there really has to be a regulatory framework around how these things operate.
So then, in the same way, Dr. Jones, that you say that the police have a direct line into your database of drivers, you would suggest that that is a prerequisite for any company operating here offering these services?
Yes, have that dashboard, because we have that dashboard available. All right. And so that now has to be a part of the policy, and already in terms of when we look at the regulation framework, we do have some things in place through the Transport Authority, but then even things like data privacy, because now that we're sharing information on users and drivers in this new framework, then we have to be very, very specific as to who manages that data, who gets to see that data, and how it is used. All right. Issues of enforcement and who is responsible for enforcement, and what the penalties might be, and processes for review and revision. So let's say you have a rideshare company that is registered here. How do we review them each year? What are these processes?
Question for you. Question for you, Dr. Jones. Your model at rideshare allows this dashboard to be accessed by law enforcement agents here, the police, i.e. the police and other investigative agents. Yes. What if a rideshare service operating here, like InDrive, like Uber, like Lyft, or any of the hundreds of others that operate across the world, what if their business model does not allow that aspect of operations, but they still want to operate here? What does the government do? Ban them and only authorize those who will allow them to access this dashboard, similar to how they access Ride Jamaica's?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think the government should take a decision based on their own interests and the interests of Jamaicans. I'm Jamaican, I live here, and so I've developed a system that I think will serve my people. Most international rideshare companies that will come in to introduce their services, for the most part,